With so many hours of footage just from the movies of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, there have been a lot of big moments that really stand out. With that much content, there are also lots of small moments as well. Thanks to the wonders of home video, those moments can be slowed down and frozen. Sometimes they reveal secrets or errors, while other times they reveal a treasure trove of Easter eggs. Without further ado, let's look at some of the most paused moments in the MCU. By the time the Avengers assembled for the first time, we've already been introduced to the face-kicking skills of S.H.I.E.L.D. super agent Natasha Romanoff. The Black Widow proved to be a formidable opponent in a world with flying armor, super soldiers, and gods of thunder. When we next saw her, we saw that the comprising situation was only going to be temporary. Tied to a chair, her kidnappers get a call from S.H.I.E.L.D. calling the Black Widow in. The resulting chair-smashing butt-kicking was incredible. It set up Natasha's practice of letting her enemy underestimate her, right up until the point they get a shock from her wristbands. If you're quick with the pause button, you can get some interesting frames, including a chair-bound backflip being done by Natasha's male stunt double, among other things. Kidnappers need to invest in sturdier chairs, huh? Captain America missed out on a lot when he went into the ice in 45. To understand the scope, he went from having to talk to an operator to make a phone call, to carrying a computer in his pocket, and computer means an entirely different thing to him. Howard never did get his hover cars in production. Too bad. To make matters worse, he woke up to a world full of pop culture references. Ever diligent, Rogers keeps a list of the ones he doesn't get. The ones he gets, he just yells out. Seeing what Cap needs to catch up on has sent people to their pause buttons. For a little extra, the list is different depending on where the movie was released. In the US and England, he had to learn about disco, but in Italy, it was more important to learn about Ferrari's Formula One wins. It took a while for the people in the Marvel Cinematic Universe to become hip to the fact that most of the bad things that were happening were because of the Infinity Stone's biggest fan wanting to complete his collection. Of course, the Avengers didn't have the benefit of seeing the end credit scene and the smirking Thanos, or read the Infinity Gauntlet comics to know what a smirking Thanos actually means. This isn't to say no one on Earth knew the impending danger posed by the Infinity Stones. People quick with the pause button and with high-resolution screens noticed a little blurb on the dossier that Nick Fury has for Captain America. Not only is there a mention of the Infinity Gems, as they're called in the comic book, but it suggests that they have a will of their own. The one unrealized Easter egg in this particular freeze frame is the source of all this Infinity info, none other than Mephisto, Marvel's ruler of the underworld. Poor Doctor Selvig. Every superhero gets their scientist. Even science bros Tony Stark and Bruce Banner had other scientists who helped them realize their true heroic selves in Ho Yinsen and Banner's Samuel Stearns and Dr. Samson. Things generally don't go well for the superhero scientist. Usually they don't make it out of the origin story alive or sane. It's that last fate that befalls Doctor Erik Selvig. Coming into contact with an Infinity Stone has left the poor Selvig with a sliding grip on reality. Not figuratively either, since he was literally witnessing multiple realities and trying to deal with the scope of it. It's a lot to take in. That's what makes his chalkboard a treasure trove of Easter eggs and hints about the future of the MCU, including Earth 616. 616 was the main Marvel timeline until a recent crossover event made it Earth Prime. We know now that Nick Fury got the outsized threats bug when he met with a rogue Kree soldier from Earth who absorbed some of the power of the Space Stone. From those early days to the realization of his Avengers initiative, Nick has been making a list and checking it twice. What? What do you mean wrong, Nick? Oh well, they both have lists. And Fury's is on a cool display as an activity map of places of interest. Tony Stark gets a peek at it in Iron Man 2. One of those was a country in Africa we've come to know pretty well, Wakanda. There's another that has yet to pay off in the Atlantic Ocean. But with Feige a confirmed Namor fan, it might only be a matter of time. Maybe Nat was right. They should have checked on that earthquake off the coast of Wakanda. Every director likes to throw in an Easter egg here and there, a little hidden nod to the fans of the comics that hint at the large world of the characters from the pages of Marvel. No director for the MCU revels in the obscure Easter egg more than James Gunn, the man behind the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. The Guardians movies are packed end to end with little treasures for fans to find. One of the most Easter egg-packed scenes in the Guardians of the Galaxy was, of course, the Collector's Collection. As an elder of the universe, he has mastered one thing, and that's collecting. In his collection, Sharp Eyes could see the cocoon Adam Warlock uses to regenerate, founding Guardian Cosmo the Space Dog, and even Howard the Duck. Each new visit reveals new Easter eggs, as the Russos even slitted a reference to their former TV gig at Arrested Development by putting a Never Nude in the collection. There are dozens of us! Not all Easter eggs pay off, but some hint at the next part of the story. The thing is, they're not always super obvious. As Scott Lang was learning the ins and outs of going small, he was provided a cautionary tale about the dangers of going too small, all the way down to the quantum realm. Janet Van Dyne, the first Wasp, had gone quantum to stop a nuclear missile in flight and never returned. Naturally, this means the only way to solve the problem at the end of the movie is if Scott goes quantum. He's able to juice his shrink machine to get himself back out, but that's not before eagle-eyed fans caught the faint outline of another person in the quantum realm with Scott. Janet and the quantum realm would turn out to be a key to the Infinity Saga. Then there's some that haven't paid off and might just be fan theories or nods that were never meant to go anywhere. When it comes to James Gunn, there's no telling. The question of Peter Quill's parentage was raised at the end of the first Guardians of the Galaxy and answered in the second when it was discovered that Quill's father was none other than Ego the Living Planet. Ego in the MCU identifies himself as a Celestial, one of the oldest beings in the universe. He lets Quill tap into that power, and in his eyes he sees eternity. The theory goes that he wasn't being poetic, he was seeing the being eternity, the consciousness that makes up the multiverse. Eternity in the comics was created when the Celestials rebelled against the first firmament and, in doing so, created the multiverse in the first place. Hot pause buttons have been looking for Eternity's telltale shape in the stars. There are a few conventions when drawing comic books. They're a visual medium meant to demonstrate motion and superhero comics action. Some of the common ones include a full-page character introduction, while a new hero or villain poses and gives a small introduction that usually ends in their name in a colorful logo. But that one isn't particularly well suited to film. Another, especially in team-up comics, is the splash page. Director Joss Whedon already had given us one cinematic version of the splash page, with the 360 shot of the assembled Avengers in the first Avengers movie. During the opening of their second outing, Age of Ultron, the film opens with the team attacking a Hydra compound to regain Loki's scepter. In one slow-motion shot, we got a classic splash page with all of our current Avengers in motion, ready to take on Hydra. Some shots are made to look like they come from the comics, and some are actual recreations of the comics. The Civil War event in the comics that inspired Captain America: Civil War spanned the entire Marvel comic line. It wasn't just fellow Avengers, but even characters like Punisher and Daredevil got involved. The cause of the event was different, and some of the stakes were changed, but there was one big similarity. At the head of either side of the conflict were former friends Captain America and Iron Man. Tony Stark was on the side of registration, and Captain America was not. Just like in the comics, this conflict came to a head between the two key Avengers. One of the best panels answered the question of what would happen if Iron Man's repulsors hit Cap's shield. The answer is that it'd look crazy awesome. Nick Fury is a man with a lot of plans. He also has a lot of plans just in case his other plans don't work out. His big plan started with an idea, and that idea turned out to be the Avengers. While the Avengers managed to successfully defend the Earth against Loki and the Chitauri, there were other places threats could come from, and only half of them would turn out to be people with a beef with Tony Stark, or things Tony Stark would make. The idea was to link helicarriers to satellites that identify threats before they happen. It's not an idea that sits well with the freedom-loving Captain America. At one point, that list of threats appears on the screen, and it becomes a word search for Easter eggs, including the name drop of one future Sorcerer Supreme, Stephen Strange. Some moments are panel-worthy because they hint or pay tribute to something that happened in the comics, and some are panel-worthy because they look cool enough that they should have happened in the comics. While Steve Rogers may have the super soldier serum coursing through his veins, his superheroics came naturally to him. With the hero mentality and now the body to match, Captain America has thrown himself into some pretty outsized situations. When his fellow unfrozen soldier, who also happened to be a programmable assassin, was accused of an attack that killed the King of Wakanda, Cap went into action. In order to not let Bucky escape, Cap grabs the skid of Bucky's helicopter with one hand and the landing pad with the other, and then invites us all to the gun show. We gotta start hitting the gym again, right after this hot dog.
God, chili dogs are so good.
Not everything comes from the comics, or hints at the future or wider world of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Sometimes it's just a clever little nod to the regular universe we live in that's never had a Captain America or an Iron Man. But it does have a Chris Evans, Robert Downey Jr., and Samuel L. Jackson. In our world, those actors have had other roles. In some cases, they've been other Marvel characters, like Chris Evans, who traded Flame On for Avengers Assemble. Yeah, that's definitely a trade-up. One of Samuel L. Jackson's most iconic roles outside of the MCU was as the hitman Jules from Pulp Fiction. Jules has a hitman signature, because why wouldn't he, where he recites a passage to his victims before doing what he came there to do. Spoiler alert, it's murder them. When he fakes his death at the end of Winter Soldier, his tombstone, if you're quick with the pause button, refers to that passage with the first line, "The path of the righteous man." Thor Ragnarok had a lot going on. It was an adaptation of the Ragnarok end of times myth of the Norse pantheon, but also from the Marvel Comics. It was a prelude to Endgame and an adaptation of the Planet Hulk storyline. It was a whole Incredible Hulk movie inside a Thor movie. Somehow it all worked out and became a lot of people's favorite Thor movie, and Hulk movie, and Marvel movie. At the center of the Hulk movie inside the Thor movie was the Grandmaster, who ran the games on the battle planet of S.H.I.E.L.D. An elder of the universe, his niche was, of course, games. The outside of his palace was decorated with sculptures of past champions that had graced S.H.I.E.L.D. before the ever-loving Hulk came to town, and one of those turns out to be a fan favorite. There's a short list of beings worthy of Mjolnir: Jane Foster, Throg, Cap, and one horsed-faced alien named Beta Ray Bill. Asgard's job was to watch over the Nine Realms. As it turns out, it got that job after a period of rapid expansion via invasions led by Odin's oldest, Hela. Once the Nine Realms were under the influence of Asgard, however, Odin adopted a much more genial approach to his rule, which didn't include waging war like Hela. But still, it was an empire created by conquest and, like any imperial power, it had its own collection of treasures. One of those played a pivotal role in the first Thor movie when the Frost Giants sought to regain their casket of ancient winters. When the Tesseract goes to the Asgardians after causing so much trouble on Earth, it ends up in the treasure vault. Any trip to the treasure vault has been a pause button treasure trove. It gave us an early hint at the Infinity Gauntlet, even if it was a fake. When we first met Steve Rogers, he was pretty far from the helicopter wrestling superhero we'd eventually come to know. He was a short and skinny kid that couldn't even qualify for a regular soldier, much less a super soldier. That doesn't hold Rogers back from trying, though. He keeps going to recruiters, hoping that one of them will have a poorly calibrated scale and a less than thorough doctor. While he may not have always been Captain America, he has always been Steve Rogers. He was charging into situations where he was outgunned long before the super soldier serum. It's that kind of determination and commitment for fighting for the oppressed that impressed both Dr. Erskine and OSS agent Peggy Carter. While Steve's character may have impressed Peggy, when he emerged from the super soldiering machine, she was notably impressed with his new look. We really need to get to the gym, but it'd be a shame for those cupcakes to go to waste. Yeah, I'll just have one more cupcake, just one. While the Marvel Cinematic Universe on the big screen has been tearing up the box office, for a short while at least, the darker end of the MCU was explored on Netflix with the so-called street-level heroes of the New York boroughs, including Luke Cage, Iron Fist, Jessica Jones, and Daredevil, the Man Without Fear. Matt Murdock, aka Daredevil, was turned blind when a chemical agent got into his eyes that also heightened the rest of his senses and gave him the ability to echolocate, similar to the way a bat or dolphin might. Batman was already taken, and Dolphin Dude sounds awful, so he became Daredevil. Since the normal person can't see with their ears, coming up with a visual representation for what Daredevil sees has always been an esoteric affair. For the Netflix adaptation, they went with the thematic representation. In contrast to Wilson Fisk's rabbit in a snowstorm, Murdoch's vision was like a world on fire. The image that went with that was hypnotizing. Some freeze frame moments come when pausing is most appropriate in the DVD and Blu-ray home releases. One of the enticements to buying the home edition to your favorite Marvel movie is all the extras that go along with it, including behind-the-scenes featurettes and deleted scenes that didn't make it into the movie. With movies cresting 3 hours now, there's still stuff they leave out. All the way back to The Incredible Hulk, a scene was deleted that was a part of a hint towards the ever-expanding Marvel Cinematic Universe. At the time, there had only been one other MCU movie, Iron Man. We hadn't yet met the first Avenger, Captain America. But in a deleted scene where downtrodden Bruce Banner tries to end his suffering in the Arctic, he has unknown company in the form of a not-yet-discovered capsicle. What was meant as a sly nod to future films became a story Bruce told Black Widow without the capsicle that he totally didn't see. While it's hard to think about today in an MCU rife with time travel and space raccoons, in the early days of the MCU, the trend in superhero movies was towards realism. The Marvel Cinematic Universe came into being right in the middle of Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. Even incorporating the God of Thunder into the mix was done with careful nods to the idea that their magic was just science we didn't understand. The Mandarin, who gets his powers from the 10 rings he crafted from the crashing spaceship of a race of space dragons, doesn't seem that weird now, but back then, it was deemed a little out of place, so Iron Man 3's Mandarin was a fake. Those disappointed by that reveal have been given hints that the real Mandarin is still out there. One of those comes from a cutscene freeze frame that shows one of the buyers for the Yellow Jacket project in Ant-Man is from the Mandarin's organization, the 10 Rings. Iron Man was the perfect kickoff to the Marvel Cinematic Universe experiment, and Robert Downey Jr. was the perfect person to bring the brash Tony Stark to life. The character, described as a B-lister before the movie came out, with the suggestion that Marvel had already sold off all its profitable characters to other studios, became an instant hit. Now, of course, Iron Man is a clear A-list character. Iron Man was such an instant hit that the Iron Man sequel made it to theaters before Captain America got his first film. But Cap wasn't completely absent from the big screen. Over the course of Iron Man 2, Tony goes through his dad's old work to find a new element for his arc reactor. To Captain America fanboy Agent Coulson's surprise, one of these things among Howard Stark's unfinished projects is a prototype of Captain America's mighty S.H.I.E.L.D. Those are some of the most paused moments in the MCU. What are your favorites? Are there any moments we may have missed? Let us know in the comments, and while you're in the clicking mood, why not subscribe to CBR and ring that notification bell for the latest videos straight to your inbox. Thanks for watching.